Good evening and welcome to our regular City Council meeting for Monday, March 1st, 2021. I'll now call this meeting to order with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Miller.
Here.
DeVore. Cruz. Cruz. Harding.
Oh,
Harding.
here. Sorry. Here.
Nera.
Here.
Sires.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Council members DeVore and Cruz absent. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to the first item, approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve our regular meeting of February 15th, 2021?
So moved.
It's been motioned
Second.
and seconded. Any council discussion? Then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes and moves us over into agenda revisions. Do we have any agenda revisions tonight, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just one quick note on item 15 on the consent calendar. The work session minutes will be corrected to reflect, quote, Councilmember Dunn asked if there is a preference that you need to work or live in Cedar Falls, and Mayor Green confirmed that that is the preference, quote.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mayor, point of order.
Yes, please.
Can we acknowledge that Mr. Cruz is here, I believe? At least
So,
seeing him on the
Councilmember Cruz, can you hear us okay now?
Yep.
Okay, terrific.
Better than earlier at this point.
Okay, so with that, looking at public forum, as we've decided to do for this year, we are going to have a public forum at the start of the meeting, and speakers will have one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics germane to city business. So does anyone from the public wish to speak tonight? From the gallery and from the internet?
Mark Nook.
Oh, so I know he had asked to speak on the mask requirement. For President Nook, if he'd like to speak now, that's completely fine.
I'm happy wherever it works best for you, now or later.
Well, to respect your time as well, this is kind of a new approach for us to have public forum in the start, but your comments will be certainly considered during that item. So if you'd like to speak now, you're completely welcome to do that. And
I'd be happy to do that since I'm on. My name is Mark Nook, and I live at 2501 College Street in Cedar Falls. Mayor Green and members of the Cedar Falls City Council, thank you for your time this evening, and also thank you very much for your service to our community. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the University of Northern Iowa. I serve as its president. Tonight's agenda will be addressing the extension of the mask mandate within Cedar Falls, and I'm here to speak in support of that. Since implementing the mandate, we have seen a number of people, the number of people infected in the Cedar Falls area and throughout our county decline sharply. But it has been because of the mask mandate and some of the other precautions that our citizens have learned to follow, and has made a big difference in our community. The vaccine is now available, but won't be widely distributed to citizens in our area for several weeks, certainly longer than past March 8th, when the current mask mandate will expire. I'm really here to ask you to extend that mandate. I know that in the past we've extended it for 6 weeks at a time. That would take us approximately to the middle of April. This has had a big impact on the University of Northern Iowa being able to stay open, keeping our students, our faculty and staff healthy. And I'm asking that you consider extending that mandate for at least 6 weeks, but I would prefer that you extend it through June 4th. Now, June 4th is my preference because that would be the Friday following the end of the Cedar Falls Public School District calendar. It would allow us to keep the children in our school district safe. It would help protect our community, make it more likely that we can reach the end of the public school year and have our students remain in face-to-face classes, which is so important to their education. I think it's a small step for the city to take to be able to keep our children safe and keep our community safe as we await for further distribution of the vaccine. The CDC is recommending that we continue to mask even after we've had the vaccine. I think it's a great practice, and following the CDC guidelines is right now the best way for us to continue to move forward. If June 4th seems too far out for the council to consider, I'd ask you to consider May 10th. This is much more personal on my part. May 10th would get us through the end of our semester here at the University of Northern Iowa, give us an opportunity to complete the classes with a face-to-face operation that we've been in and not have to move to an online and send many of our students home. We are seeing everything move in the right direction at the moment. It's not the right time to back up, take our foot off our safety and health pedal, but to continue to follow the guidelines that we've seen work so well, continue to keep our community safe, continue to keep our school children and our college students able to get the face-to-face instruction that means so much to the quality of their education. So if the council decides that 6 weeks is the right amount, I fully support that. I would really support and I would encourage the council to consider extending the mask mandate through Friday, June 4th, to allow our public school students to get the type of education, the face-to-face education that means so very much to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nook. And if council doesn't object, we haven't really discussed this before, but if someone speaks during public comment, I'd like to allow them the opportunity to speak on that same item during the actual items part, in case there's some additional information that came out. I think it's fairly similar to allowing them to speak in the item and then at public forum at the end in the previous years. So, Dr. Nook, if something comes up that you do want to speak on, you do have that 5 minutes during the item itself, sir.
Thank you.
And does anyone else wish to speak in public comment?
Jim Skane?
Okay, Mr. Skane, the floor is yours, sir. I would just recommend turning down your volume on your television so you don't get an echo.
Yeah. I applauded the city council action last time by making Robert's Rules of Order version 12 official, and since that time I have been reviewing Robert's and the city council agenda and find that the city council agenda is well out of compliance with Robert's rules. First, there should be at the beginning of the council meeting a category on reports. Now, these are now considered at the end of the meeting, and that's not where they should be. There are a number of things that should be in the reports category. Second, I noticed that there is a special order of business, and that particular category, as is in the agenda, does not comport with Roberts at all. Third, I would note that once again, the issue of germane is in the council agenda, and it is a complete misinterpretation of what germane really means, and therefore it is out of order. Fourth, I would note that the business of having the agenda items grouped so that they would be passed by a single vote without debate is totally inconsistent with the Roberts, because Roberts indicates that each item should be accompanied by a motion, and that motion should be clearly stated in the agenda. There is also the problem of things that are in the consensus calendar not being consensus items, because Robert says that these should be items that have already been discussed but just haven't reached a resolution, and then they can be grouped together. So it is important that now that you've adopted Robert's Rules version 12, that the council agendas reflect that. This agenda reflects none of that, and actually most of the items that are in it would be out of order. But I appreciate the opportunity to comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane. Anyone else from the public wish to comment?
I'm not seeing any in Zoom.
Okay, and none others from the gallery. So with that, I will close the public forum and bring us into special presentations. I've got two proclamations tonight that I'd like to read. The first, I'm being joined by Director Kelly Stern from the Cedar Falls Public Library, and this is a proclamation recognizing Read Across America Day as March 2nd, 2021. And so with that, I'll read, whereas Read Across America is an annual initiative of the National Education Association to promote reading for pleasure and personal growth, and whereas this Motivational and Awareness Day on March 2nd each year encourages children and young adults to celebrate reading in every community across the United States. And whereas the Cedar Falls Public Library, local school libraries, and bookstores are a treasure trove of adventures, knowledge, and inspiration through the written word. And whereas children benefit from seeing their parents, guardians, and other important role models actively engaged in reading for pleasure and growth. Therefore, I, Mayor Robert M. Green of Cedar Falls, do hereby proclaim March 2nd, 2021 as Read Across Cedar Falls Day throughout the city and encourage citizens to celebrate literacy and the written word by visiting the Cedar Falls Public Library, school library, or bookstore and selecting a great book to help pass along a love of reading to the next generation. Signed this 25th day of February, 2021. And Director Stern, do you have some words for us for tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you said, since 1998, the National Education Association's Read Across America celebration has engaged teachers, librarians, politicians, celebrities, and family members in modeling the importance and joy of reading for young readers. So if you need something to read tomorrow or any day, the Cedar Falls Public Library is here to help you find the right book for you or for someone you will read to. If you need suggestions, we would be glad to help you. Just call or stop by during our browsing hours and join us tomorrow to help celebrate Read Across America Day. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Director Stern. And our next item tonight is in honor of today being the start of National Women's Month. We also have International Women's Day on March 8th, 2021. And so I'll read, whereas International Women's Day was honored for the first time in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland in 1911, and whereas March 8th is designated worldwide as International Women's Day to recognize the achievements of women and their contribution to society. And whereas women can celebrate significant progress in equality globally, but also contemplate those areas where more can be done through access to education, healthcare, and paid labor, as well as legislation to ensure equal opportunities for women and respect for their human rights. And whereas Nowhere in the world can women claim to have all the same rights and opportunities as men, and until we work together to secure the rights and full potential of women, lasting solutions to social, economic, and political problems are unlikely to be found. Therefore, I, Mayor Robert M. Green of Cedar Falls, do hereby proclaim March 8th, 2021 as International Women's Day in the city of Cedar Falls, and encourage citizens to work to address the social, economic, and political barriers still facing women and girls while celebrating their achievements and the progress made in support of women's equality. Signed this 25th day of February 2021. So with that, I'll bring us over into our special order of business. The first item is number 4, public hearing on the proposed lease agreement with the Cedar Falls Municipal Band relative to the Overman Park band shell. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So then, do we have any written communications filed, Madam Clerk?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. That brings us to staff comments, and Director Rodenbeck has a few words for us tonight.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. For many years, the city has had a lease with a municipal band for the band shell structure located in Overman Park. In 2019, there started to be some discussion about who actually owns the band shell. And so it was, after some research and discussion with them, it was determined that we really should write a new lease that clearly outlines who that ownership belongs with, because the old lease did not do that. So while we were drafting up that new lease, we also took the opportunity just to update some things as it relates to maintenance and insurance and that type of thing with the municipal band. So the lease you have before you tonight, again, takes care of some of those things, but again, outlines that the municipal band actually owns the band shell, and then the city owns the land that the band shell sits on.
Okay, thank you. So before moving into staff and council discussion, are there any public comments tonight on this item? Okay, seeing none from the gallery?
I don't see any in Zoom either.
Okay, thank you. So I'll consider the public hearing closed and move us into Part E, which is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a lease agreement with the Cedar Falls Municipal Band relative to the Overman Park band shell. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any council discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none. Any on Zoom? Seeing none there either. So with no further discussion, then this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us to item 5, which is a public hearing on proposed amendments to Chapter 26 zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to adaptive reuse of institutional buildings. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. And Madam Clerk, are there any written communications filed?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And our staff comments tonight are going to be Mr. Chris Seavey. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Green. I really appreciate this opportunity, Mayor Green and council members, to come before you tonight to present this amendment to our zoning ordinance. Since a lot of the background to this proposed text amendment had been discussed at the December 7th Committee of the Whole meeting, I'll just give a high-level overview. Last year, we'd been approached by the owner of a church where the pastor had passed away, and the building has sat vacant ever since. The owner wants to use it as a venue to host wedding receptions, which happens at church buildings all the time, but as a commercial use, it is not allowed in residential zones where most of our church buildings sit. That we know of, at least 3 church buildings in Cedar Falls presently sit vacant and may benefit from this amendment. We can go on to the next slide, or yep, okay, cool. Okay. Without this amendment, their options are slim. They can sit vacant, sell to another church, convert to a school or a community recreational facility, or tear down and subdivide into residential lots. However, we believe that these buildings, which carry some cultural and historical value, have the potential to continue to be an amenity to a neighborhood. Since they may be worth preserving in some capacity, allowing alternative uses may be appropriate, but we also need to safeguard neighborhood character. I did quite a bit of research to make sure that we take a careful, balanced, and effective approach here. I reached out to several cities. I reviewed many other codes. I was actually surprised to find that every other city in Iowa of similar size to Cedar Falls has a conditional use process outlined in their code. Those are cities like Marshalltown, Bettendorf, Urbandale, so on. We currently do not have a defined conditional use process, but this may be the right time to introduce it. Conditional uses are a fairly standard zoning tool to offer flexibility while safeguarding neighborhood character. The other codes I looked at provided much of the basis for how this ordinance is crafted. All well-crafted conditional use policies have these elements such as the rules and regulations that govern the policy, and an outline of the uses that qualify for consideration. Also, conditional uses have evaluation criteria that need to be met. Nothing is granted by right, and if something does not fit into a neighborhood, even with some conditions imposed, the use should not be granted. Or said in a different way, if the evaluation criteria are not met, the use does not get approved. The policy should also outline what is required in a complete submission from the applicant, or at least what their burden of proof is. Also, notice to neighbors is very important. Neighborhood support or concern for a proposal can really help gauge whether the applicant's proposal meets the required criteria. So let's get into the code language. I'm not going to read it word for word, but we'll point out some highlights. As you may recall from my previous discussion in Committee of the Whole, this language was reviewed by our city attorney, and it was by his recommendation that we use the Board of Adjustment, which is the standard in Iowa. His recommendation was not surprising because all the codes that I reviewed utilize the Board of Adjustment in special exception and conditional use cases. The applicant will bear the burden of proof that they meet all requirements as set forth under this section. As far as precedent, other cases have no bearing on the decision of future cases and cannot serve as support or reasoning for approval of a request. This is because all neighborhoods are unique, and it will be important to judge each case on its own merits. For instance, a decision about a church close to downtown should have no bearing on a decision about a church in the Cedar Heights neighborhood. Point D here indicates that all regulations of the base zone and overlays still apply. So setbacks, landscaping, required yards, so on and so forth. This part gives room for other conditional uses to be added in the future, but this specific ordinance about adaptive reuse of institutional facilities will be the first on the list. So here we have a description of the situations that apply and the potential requirements that may be imposed as conditions if a use is granted. We're talking things like additional screening, landscaping, and operational limitations. Here's the official list of qualifying uses that we propose in the code. These are lower impact uses and potential amenities to a neighborhood. Many of these reflect the kind of activity and benefit that a church typically offers a neighborhood. Now, a use on this list never guarantees that it will get approved. In fact, there may be some cases where only 1 or 2 of these will be appropriate. But this list is meant to be liberal enough to cover situations where such uses might actually be appropriate. Hope that makes sense. And these are the criteria for approval. Some of these are specific to the intended situation that we're talking about, and some criteria are standard language for protecting the interests of those in the neighborhood that you'll see in most conditional use case or use codes. This is really where the burden of proof kicks in for the applicant. If they are sensitive to the character of a neighborhood, they may even propose the conditions and ways in which they can best fit into the neighborhood. Lastly, these are the required submittals so they can fulfill that burden of proof. This will require a detailed letter describing the previous use and the proposed use with the appropriate details. Also a site plan illustrating the proposal, a list of landowners in the surrounding neighborhood within 300 feet, and anything else that may be applicable. Community development staff brought this before the Planning and Zoning Commission back in the fall, where they recommended approval. This was also presented to the Board of Adjustment on January 7th. In that meeting, the proposal was well received, and we feel that they understand the implications of the proposed ordinance, as they asked a lot of questions and were very engaged in that discussion. The important takeaway there is that they are willing to hear conditional use cases if or when the ordinance passes. At this point, I'm happy to discuss and answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. And before we do that, I will open it for public comment first. And do we have anyone who wishes to speak from the gallery on this item tonight? Okay, I'm seeing none. So any from online?
Seeing none?
Okay, so with that, seeing none from Zoom or the gallery, I'll consider the public hearing closed and move us into questions or comments from council members on this item. Yes, Councilmember Dunn.
I appreciate all the hard work.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Shouldn't we
Yes.
be in a motion?
I'm sorry. We should have a motion.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Point of order. Excellent. So there is a, let's see, is there a motion to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 26 zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to adaptive reuse and institutional buildings upon its first consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded, and now we can discuss. My apologies.
Okay, so I'm thinking of one beautiful old church in our, not far from downtown, that I feel like this is intended to. It would be a travesty, in my opinion, for that old building to just sit there and deteriorate and be lost if someone was willing to step up and repurpose that building. I feel like this is exactly what would allow something like that to happen. So I appreciate staff's hard work and looking into everything and getting this set up for us.
Thank you, Councilmember Dunn. Other questions, thoughts? Councilmember Cyrus?
The only thing that worries me is the one that's being brought forward is a wedding reception, and I think that's a great idea. I think that goes along with churches. When people buy in a neighborhood that has a church in it, they expect that kind of traffic and those kinds of things. I don't think that the wedding reception sounds like a great place. The only thing I worry about is developers taking these and making apartment buildings and those kinds of things. It would be nice if they were all required to have such a thing as the wedding type chapel or something along those lines. I don't have a problem with that. I just worry about the different kind of traffics as long as it's church traffic type things. I think that would be great. That's the thing that concerns me. I think there needs to be something a little different that says it'll be in accordance. I don't think it can be stressed enough with the neighborhood. So that's kind of my concern over this. Thank you.
Councilmember Miller.
For staff, under the qualifying uses, this kind of hits on Councilman Cedar's point. Number 2 is conversion to a multi-unit dwelling in a zone where such use is not otherwise allowed or where the proposed number of units exceeds the number otherwise allowed in the zone. Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, so I believe, so we got a question from somebody who was looking at a church that was actually close to downtown. It may be the same one that Councilmember Dunn was referring to, where in order for it to for them to spend the money to update it, to do what they needed to, they were requesting a certain number of units, which was not allowed in that particular zone. And it's not to say that staff would recommend approval or denial in that case. It really depends on the context of the neighborhood and notification to neighbors and what is decided by the Board of Adjustment with an ordinance like this. So a lot of that is handled on the back end of most of these, well, of all of these cases, really. So if something doesn't fit, it doesn't pass. So
that allows for it to be brought forth at least. It still has to get Board of Adjustment approval. It still has to, be considered for parking or considered for any other number of things, but it allows for it to be brought forward.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilor Harding.
Is there an appeals process? I couldn't find it in here. Let's say the Board of Adjustment approved something and there was a petition for an appeal. Is there a way that people could appeal in the neighborhood to the council or something like that?
So I would actually defer to Karen Howard on that, if she's on.
Yes, Ms. Howard, I see you there.
I'm on Zoom. I'm happy to answer that question, and I'm sure that Mr. Rogers can also answer that question, but matters that come before the Board of Adjustment can be appealed to district court. That's the appeal route with the Board of Adjustment.
So would that include, let's say someone wanted to make a multi-residential dwelling out of a church and the Board of Adjustment approved it, but the neighborhood was not happy with that. Could the neighborhood have a petition signed to appeal that to council, or would they have to go to court? Or Kevin's shaking his head, so I'm ready to hear.
So the hearing that is before the Board of Adjustment is the time for the neighborhood, and that's why the neighborhood is notified about that hearing, and that's their time to weigh in and present evidence and their feelings about the proposal. And that way the Board of Adjustment can weigh all the evidence from the neighborhood, and everything is presented at that hearing, and that's how they make their decision. But the board's decision always are appealed to the district court. I don't know if Mr. Rogers has any more comments about that particular route.
Just add that, and that's as with any Board of Adjustment decision, the appeal process is directly to district court, and council wouldn't have a role in that.
Kevin, sorry, I'm getting kind of specific or trying to get, if the person who was applying for I'm just going to use multi-residential dwelling, since that's where we're at, if it was denied by the Board of Adjustment, they could appeal to the district court. If it was approved, could the residents around there appeal to the district court? Do they have any recourse, or is it only the person applying that has recourse?
Same process. They would have appeal right to challenge the decision of BOA.
Okay, so there is a process.
District court.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from council? Okay, seeing none, then this item's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Nay.
Dunn?
Aye.
5 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us over into old business. Item 6 is passing ordinance 2984, amending Chapter 6 Animals of the Code of Ordinances relative to permitting poultry in residential areas upon its third and final consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Open for council discussion. Seeing none. Also open for public discussion or public comment.
Seeing none?
And none from the gallery. So that item has been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Miller?
Aye.
Cruz?
Aye.
Harding?
Aye.
Dara?
Aye.
Sires?
Nay.
Sires?
Nay.
Dunn?
Aye.
5 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that brings us to item 7, which is passing ordinance 2985, amending Chapter 6 Animals of the Code of Ordinances relative to establishing regulations for rear yard poultry in residential areas upon its third and final consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
Move we pass ordinance 2985.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Council discussion? Okay, and from public?
Seeing none?
Okay, so that item's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Miller?
Aye.
Cruz?
Aye.
Harding?
Aye. Aye.
Harding?
Aye.
Dara?
Aye.
Sires?
Nay.
Dunn?
Aye.
5 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us to item 8, passing ordinance 2983, amending Chapter 15 nuisances of the Code of Ordinances relative to keeping poultry in residential areas upon its third and final consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
So motion and seconded. Open for council discussion. And from public, any public comment?
Nothing in Zoom?
None, and none from the gallery? Okay, so this item's been motioned and seconded and also requires a roll call vote.
Miller?
Aye.
Cruz?
Aye.
Harding?
Yes.
Dara?
Aye.
Sires?
Nay.
Dunn?
Aye.
5 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that takes us down to item 9, which is a resolution extending the face mask mandate for the city of Cedar Falls. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Open for council discussion. Questions?
Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
Councilmember
may
Dunn.
I make and correct me if this is not how I'm supposed to say this, an amendment?
Certainly, you can make an amendment.
Okay.
At this time.
May I make an amendment to change from 6 weeks, to change it to be in place through June 4th?
So the amendment, it's been moved to amend this item from April 7th. Is that correct? Instead of being April 7th to instead be June 4th. Does this have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by, is that Dara?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so motion by Dunn, seconded by Dara. I'll open that for discussion of amending this resolution to June 4th rather than April 7th.
I see the logic in it, but I'd rather talk about it more frequently, personally, than just leave it on the back burner. So it's noble, and I want to respect the schools and everything, but I like talking about it. So I think talking about it again in a month is not a bad idea if it passes.
Okay. Any other comments from council on that or discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cruz, go ahead.
Thank you.
reading in the news, I see quite a number of articles relating to herd immunity that's being developed either naturally or through the vaccine throughout the community. And I think along with council members Harding's comments that we can take it 6 weeks at a time or whatever the date is and evaluate it that way and can easily extend it if appropriate. But I think if we stick to the original proposal, we'll be totally fine. We won't have a problem with that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Okay, so this is just to amend from April 7th to June 4th. And it has been motioned and seconded, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, so,
Nay.
yep. So that does fail.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And that brings us back to the original motion of the April 7th date. So this, just to repeat, this is a resolution extending the face mask mandate for the city of Cedar Falls to April 7th. So additional discussion? Yeah, so
Already
it's,
motioned.
yeah, it's on the floor already. So I just wanted to make clear what we're discussing now. And I'll open it for council to continue discussion. And if nothing further, then I'll take it to public comment. So anything else from council right now?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Dunn.
I think there's a question of a lot of folks, of, at least to me anyway, of, well, when is this, how long are you going to keep standing behind this? And to me, first we need to be conscious of where we're getting our information from. I believe our health department, and I believe the Center of Disease Control. I have no reason to not believe in the experts from those places. So in my opinion, as long as those folks are recommending that people mask, that is how long I will try to have that ordinance in place, obviously with fellow council support. So I just wanted to answer that question because I think people think that I wear a mask 9-10 hours a day. It's not like I live to wear a mask, but I do believe in the experts, and I do believe that's what's kept me and my fellow healthcare workers safe throughout this. A lot of times when people make comments, I think some of them are the ones that maybe, obviously everybody can have their opinion, and I appreciate their input, but if you're able to be at home and not constantly around people who are sick or I think of retail folks, all those people. I can tell you that if there's an ordinance or a mandate, or if your employer has a policy in place, I feel like it helps those folks to be safe, not only in their workplace, but when they go home to their families. And in the end, when we want to talk about businesses staying open, it helps us to stay open because your employees can come to work. So that is how I feel about the masking.
Thank you, Councilmember Dunn. Do any council members have questions for staff or?
Just a point of clarification to make sure, since it would expire, it's written in there April 7th, so we would then talk about it again at the April 5th meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so.
And there is a provision in the resolution that it has to be brought before council again. So it can't just die. It will be discussed again.
Okay.
So I'll open it up for public comment at this point. So Mr. Frine, come on forward, please, sir. Name and address for the record.
TJ Frine, 1319 Austin Way. I think when we talk about businesses being able to stay open, businesses had restrictions and mandates for masks long before the Cedar Falls mandate. And most of them, or at least some of them will, long after the mandate is allowed to expire. I think that it's awesome that business owners can make their own decisions on what's best for them. I think that's important. There was a little bit of talk about the schools. The school district kind of sets their own guidelines as well. When the state lifted their restrictions approximately 2 weeks ago, the school district came out and said, well, we're not. You're going to continue to wear a mask. So again, they kind of set their own guidelines. My son wears a mask at school. because that's what the school says he's going to do. Private businesses say you're going to wear a mask. Guess what? If you want to go in there, you're going to wear a mask. If you don't like it, too bad. You're going to either have to go somewhere else or you're going to not participate. And then the library, they also set their own rules. This was brought up before. The library is, Cedar Falls resolution says 5 and under don't have to wear a mask, or younger than 5, excuse me. Now the library is 2 and below. So they also set their own rules. Allowing businesses to do this will make it better for them, because I think that they know better how to operate their business than the government trying to get involved. And this is no way anti-mask. Again, allowing private businesses to make private decisions is what's best for them. 2 weeks ago, approximately, the governor lifted her restrictions for social distancing. And a lot of talk was, well, numbers are going to spike. Numbers didn't spike. As a matter of fact, I read in the paper today that the entire Blackhawk County, there was only 4 positive cases out of the test results. They quit publishing the percentage, because last percentage I saw was 4.3% positivity rate. Now, if we can't keep moving the goalpost for this. There's got to be an end game for people. We can't keep saying, we're never going to get to absolute zero, nor can that be the goal. Private businesses can make their own decisions. CDC says schools are perfectly safe when done safely, and schools have done that. Cedar Falls has done an excellent job. Again, my son goes to school there. They've done a great job of keeping the kids safe, keeping the kids in person. They require a mask. University of Northern Iowa requires students on campus to wear a mask. Let them continue to make their own decisions. What UNI doesn't regulate is students off campus. The resolution allows for people that live together to not wear masks. It doesn't regulate house parties. It doesn't stop people from going to the bars and not wearing a mask. So why should we try to force it upon them to make those decisions? Everybody is an adult, can make decisions. Parents can make decisions for their children. It's been that way for a long time. Again, when is it time to remove it? The governor lifted her restrictions, and we didn't see numbers spike. We were told that they were going to spike. We also saw a spike after the mask mandate was put in place, where numbers went through the roof. So again, we're going to continue to see peaks and valleys, as we have done for almost a year now. Let's let private businesses make their own decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prine. Anyone else from the gallery wishing to speak on this item? Mr. Sharp, go ahead, sir.
Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street, Cedar Falls. So I just have a question, kind of what I echo what TJ said, and letting businesses make their own decisions, but I also believe in the mask. I wear it 8 hours a day plus 2 at work. On section 7, it says if any provision of the resolution is irreconcilable conflict with a specific directive in the governor's proclamation, then in effect. My question would be, if governor would be to say no mask mandate, what have you, before April 7th, does the city follow that? I also understand that the cities can establish home rules, which unfortunately legislatures have been taking that right away from the cities. So can you kind of help me understand, like, if the governor makes a proclamation about removing the mask mandate, how that would affect us? Thank you.
So I'll defer to Mr. Rogers on that, and I might have a couple of comments on it as well, but we've had some discussions about this. So Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Mayor. If I heard the question correctly, the hypothetical situation posed was if the governor would come out in a proclamation or order and prohibit cities from imposing mask requirements, then if that happened, I believe this resolution would be in conflict. And through section 7, the proclamation or order from the governor would prevail.
So does that answer the question for you? Okay. Anyone else from the gallery wishing to speak on the item? Okay, so then through Zoom?
Andrew Morse.
Okay, so Mr. Morse, name and address for the record, please, sir, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Andrew Morse, and I live at 1621 Franklin Street. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the proposed extension to the Cedar Falls mask mandate. I want to echo the recommendation by UNI President Mark Nook that we extend this mandate through Friday, June 4th. While we are seeing numbers decline in recent weeks, our mission is far from accomplished. Black Hawk County still remains near the top third of positive tests per 100,000 population. Public health experts estimate at least 70% of the population will need to be vaccinated before we reach herd immunity. In Iowa, that's about 2.2 million Iowans. To date, about 6% of Iowans have been fully vaccinated, and about 17% have received at least one dose. To the comments about extending the proposed mask mandate through April 7th, because the vaccinations that we have at the moment require 2 doses, we will not reach herd immunity or even close to it by April 7th. Vaccines will, however, be a game changer for our community, but we're not ready to lift the mask mandate that is effectively slowing the spread while our healthcare workers vaccinate our retirees and community members who are at risk of serious illness and death through the exposure to COVID-19. As supply increases, we will then need to allow our healthcare workforce the chance to turn their attention to vaccinating the broader community. We know our vaccine supply is expected to increase. The CDC just approved the Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine, which will add to the increasing supply soon available for broad distribution to the general public in the coming months. Let our children finish school. Keep our businesses open. Let our workers be as safe as possible in their workplaces. And on that point, I do want to highlight earlier comments as if businesses are a singular entity. Businesses are comprised of employees who take great care to keep themselves safe. And restricting the ability for their safety in the workplace is a significant issue that we should keep top of mind. Let our grandparents feel as secure as possible in their homes, neighborhoods, and communities. Give our healthcare workers a chance to vaccinate our community by keeping intact a policy measure with proven results. Our university president came earlier to this body and showed the efficacy of mask mandates on our own campus. Our declining positivity rate and the mere partial relief felt by our healthcare workforce is no cause for ending this critical public health measure in Cedar Falls. It is instead a reminder of the importance that we continue the interim measures required of us to keep our grandparents, families, and frontline workers safe. I ask you to do just that tonight by extending this mask mandate until at least June 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morse. Other public comment?
Mark Nook.
Yeah, so Dr. Nook, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you again. First of all, thank you for the amendment to at least consider moving this to June 4th. I believe, as you've just heard from Mr. Morris and others, June 4th really does respect the health care of our children, the health care of our entire community, so thank you for considering that. I do encourage you to pass the motion now in front of you to extend this mask mandate at least through April 7th. We'll continue to protect our community, protect the workers in all of our businesses, and really make a difference in keeping the spread of COVID-19 to a minimum. It's the single best thing we can do for our community, aside from increasing the vaccination rate, which we have no control over. So again, thank you for taking this measure up tonight. Thank you for considering it carefully. Thank you for considering an extension through June 4th to protect the health of our children. Again, this is an important issue for continuing to protect the health and safety of all of our citizens and to give our healthcare workers an opportunity to vaccinate everyone in our community as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nook. Other public comment?
Not seeing any more.
Okay, so with that, I'll bring it back to council for any final comments or discussion, questions for a vote. Any? Okay. All right, so I'm seeing none. Any from on Zoom? Seeing none there either. So it's been motioned and seconded to extend the face mask mandate for the city of Cedar Falls to April 7th. And this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Nay.
Harding,
Yes.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Nay.
Dunn.
Aye.
4 voting aye, 2 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us over to item 10, which is a resolution a resolution authorizing city staff to approve or deny the application of the Cedar Basin Music Festival for a public event permit for June 25th through 27th, 2021, pursuant to the provisions of the Code of Ordinances. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Motion and seconded. And open it up for council questions or discussion on this item.
Do we need to clarify approval or denial?
Well,
Technicalities?
so I'll turn it over to Mr. Gaines to forward on to staff for a discussion on this.
Sure, Mayor. As we heard last time from several council members, they asked the question of why are we considering this? Because in the Code of Ordinances, both items number 10 and 11 would be something that at the Code of Ordinances allows staff to determine that. So what you have before you is a resolution having staff handle that. Staff has looked at both of these applications, and if they are approved this evening, staff will be issuing those permits because they meet all of the technical criteria outlined in the code.
So the resolution is to basically send it back to city staff.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the reason we did that was because we didn't want, or I didn't want to do that without, since the council had asked to bring it forward as a postponement, I didn't feel it'd be appropriate for staff to then just adjudicate on it without the council having that go ahead to do that.
But then it will be approved if we vote on
Mayor?
this. I guess,
Councilmember Sires first.
yeah, I'm with Miller. So if we approve this, it'll go back to staff and they will okay it.
Correct.
Okay.
There's no reason for staff to deny it.
Right.
With what's outlined in the Code of Ordinances.
So there was a comment from within Zoom. Was that, who was that? So Councilmember Cruz, go ahead.
Thank you. My understanding of the process, we postponed 2 items on the agenda. Well, we split up one item into 3 parts, and we postponed. 2 of these are now here, but they've been changed. The language has been changed. So I don't think it's proper to do so. And the reason I say that, the council has the discretion to vote on these, because item 14 in the Sturgis Falls contract says any misunderstandings or concerns related to this agreement may be appealed to the city council by Sturgis Falls Committee and the city. So we are able to debate this issue at the council level. So I feel it's appropriate to have an in-depth discussion. And in addition to that, the tech review is similar to what I would say planning and zoning, going through a tech review on an item, and then it's rolled up then to council to look at the nuances of the event, nuances of the area, and then make an overall decision on the merits of an item. So I think it's totally appropriate for the council to evaluate the permit. We know that the tech review has approved it. That part, city staff has done their job. Now the council should do theirs. Thank you.
So just for clarification, typically the process for event permits, does it require council intervention at all? I'm saying a no.
That's correct, Mayor. It does not.
So that would be the same case for these 2 ones as well. Okay. So any other questions for staff before I go to public comment?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
item 14 in the contract, we haven't spoke to that because it says any misunderstanding or concerns, it can be appealed to City Council for a decision.
What contract?
We ignore that.
What contract are you referring to? Just curious.
The Sturgis Falls contract, city contract.
It's not what we're debating.
But that's not what we're voting
These are
on.
Sturgis Falls events.
Okay, so Councilmember Harding?
It's my understanding that we're only talking about the event permit for the Cedar Basin Music Festival and authorizing city staff to approve or deny the application. We're not talking about Sturgis Falls at all. Am I wrong?
That's the way I understand it, too. Sturgis Falls application was pulled from the agenda, I believe.
Correct.
These are separate events, separate special permits, and voted on separately.
Mr.
Right,
Mayor.
and that was requested or required by council in the last meetings, the previous meeting, to consider those separately. The council's expressed desire was
Correct,
to not
Mr. Mayor.
have them together. Please don't interrupt me. To have those items together, and that's what we're doing tonight. So Councilmember Cruz?
But the language has been changed from the previous meeting.
Language of what?
We postponed different language and now it's been altered. It was approved to be discussed earlier. The council makes the decision.
So would you like to motion to have something different come forward to council?
Well, I'd like to motion that, well, language has been changed here improperly as far as I can see. So I guess point of order on that aspect of it.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember.
What language specifically has been changed? Is something in this contract right here for the Cedar Basin Music Festival, or?
The two of the three items that were discussed at the previous council meeting pertain to council making the decision to approve the permit.
I think I
Now
get
we're
what you're. Go ahead, sorry.
It's been changed that the resolution is authorizing city staff to approve or deny. The discussion points in the last meeting were that council made the decision to approve or deny.
Right, and council can still do that by voting against this resolution. And then it would be considered by council.
And I think if we backtrack to the clerk, we voted to separate all of these prior to that. So we still vote on them separately, even though the Sturgis one was pulled off of the agenda.
Right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Cyrus?
The first resolution is actually for the Cedar Valley Music Festival, which is grandfathered in anyway and should be approved immediately because that doesn't have anything to do with that other contract. This was started by some people about 45 years ago. So I move that we just go ahead and approve it immediately because this one doesn't really have any.
That's not the motion on the floor.
Okay.
So, if I may.
Sure.
So, Daryl, or Councilmember Cruz, sorry, would you rather just, the language, I pulled up the language from last time. It states that, let's see, right here. We separate it, but it was about approving public event permits for Live to Nine and Cedar Basin Music Festival. So theoretically, we could just go ahead and amend the resolution to approve it, and then it would be the same language. Would that be okay with you?
If that duplicates what was last time, say yes.
Okay, well then I make a motion.
We can't really do that. It wouldn't, I don't think it'd be appropriate to amend this item.
Okay, I can make a motion to amend it, right?
Well, it's an entirely
Mr. Rogers
different.
had it going up and down, so.
Yeah, I can't see Mr. Rogers and his expressions, but my sense is this is so different that it would require withdrawal of the motion or a vote on it. But in your opinion, Mr. Rogers, would it be okay to just simply amend the entire thing and have a different item brought forward? I don't think I've tried that before.
It appears to me that the controversy here is that the agenda item, specifically number 10 and 11, does not reflect what council's wishes were the previous meeting. And so it appears to me that the resolution that's before council could be amended to strike city staff to approve or deny, and instead resolution authorizing the application of Cedar Basin Music Festival, et cetera.
So,
Okay, so it isn't a completely different item. It simply is changing a few words. So
Right.
Okay. So that could be an amendment.
so in that case, I would move to amend to be resolution authorizing to approve the application of the Cedar Basin Music Festival for public event permit for June 25th through 27th.
Okay,
Second.
so that's been motioned and seconded and open for additional discussion from council.
Now it's the same
Do you
item.
want to say approve or deny, Mr. Mayor?
It's to approve.
Right here.
This is to approve
This
the
is
item.
to approve.
And to change the language to approve the item. Once that's amended, then they can actually vote on the approval.
Ms.
I got that right. Okay. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
as
Council-
I had said before, this group here had been grandfathered in. So I hope everybody approves that. It was started about 45 years ago, Cedar Valley Jazz Basin.
Okay. I'll open it for public, for public comment. This is just to change the language. We still have to vote through the entire item itself. So do you want to comment now, or do you want to comment once we're talking about the approval of the item? So all we're doing is talking about changing language right now. So I'll hold off on that. Okay. That's what I thought. All right, Mr. Sharp, name and address for the record, please, sir.
Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street, Cedar Falls. I'm just going back to the original aspect. This has not been in your purview forever. From what I understand, the staff approves public permits. So why are we changing the rules for certain entities? Because they upset Sturgis Falls. I'm asking for consistency in following the rules. Let staff do what they've been doing for 20 to 30, 40 years with these public permits. Do not muddy the waters by changing the language to accommodate something that may or may not make Sturgis Falls happy. It's simple. And we haven't seen the Sturgis Falls contract either. It's just like the last meeting. They came up with 8 or 9 amendments that we haven't seen. I understand it got pulled from the council or from the agenda. But let's just be consistent and do what we've done in the past. And let staff do what they've been doing in the past. And let's not set a precedent for future events. Well, you did this back on March 1st of 2021. Please, let's continue what you trust the staff to do. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll get to it in just a moment. Any other public comment for the item or for the amendment?
We've had one hand raised for quite a while. I'm not sure. We'll ask.
And name of the,
0045.
okay, so I see 0045. Do you have a comment on this item?
Yes, this is Bob Seymour, 2710 Country Meadow Lane in Cedar Falls, and I'm involved with Cedar Basin Music Festival and Live to 9 events. And first off, I want to reiterate for the staff report that there are absolutely no legitimate reasons to deny these permits that are in front of the council tonight. Both entities have followed every procedure that's required for permit approval, just like they have for the last numerous years. Neither organization is part of Sturgis Falls. There aren't any misunderstandings or concerns, and we certainly appreciate the recommendation to move forward. And both of these events, you know, we've been trying to finalize our plans here now. We've been delayed by well over a month by the attempts from Sturgis Falls to really monopolize and control the approval of these events and these permits. There's no reason to do that. And we're at the point right now where the music festival and Live 9, we need to book our bands, we need to secure our sponsors, and we need to move forward so we can hold these events that everyone in this town is actually hoping we can have at the end of this, at the end of June. So as we submitted to City Council last week, the Music Festival and Live to 9 strongly encourage Council to have staff maintain that review and approval of the festival and park use permits, just like they've done for the last 30 years, as long as those applications meet that criteria. And we need to make darn sure we keep the review and that approval process out of the hands of any volunteer group that's really going to have an obvious self-interest and biased review in any determination of which entities get those permits and which ones are approved. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Any other public comment?
Not seeing any in Zoom.
So bringing it back to council, this, just to be clear where we're at, this is a resolution, or excuse me, amending the resolution on the floor to say, to strike authorizing city staff so that it just reads resolution approving the application of the Cedar Basin Music Festival. So that's all we're up for discussion now. Councilmember Harding.
Just want to quickly reiterate that I do agree with the sentiments of following the process. I think that's a big thing. We have the process, the policy, the ordinances for a reason. So going forward, I would really like to see this back in the hands of staff. I agree with the appeals coming to council. I do think we're here where we're at right now. It was postponed last time with the language reading approving the permit. So we can move forward and really put this, vote on it tonight. I do believe that it's pertinent. We're here. Let's settle it now and let's amend hopefully amend the resolution to read like it read last time, to follow council's wishes, vote on it. Yay.
Thank you, Councilor Harding. Any other council discussion on this amendment?
I agree. I want to move forward, but I also agree that we should not muddy the waters. It should stay, the protocol has been in place. It should stay in place. There's no reason, it's been said, there's no reason to deny this. So it's time to move forward. These people have a party to plan. Let's do what we do. Like Citizen said at last council meeting, it's not our job to pick winners and losers on this. It's time to move forward and follow the protocol.
Okay.
For clarity's sake, we're only at the amend portion?
That's
Yes.
correct. Good. So just to be clear, when this is voted on, aye or nay, to change the amendment, what that'll do is keep that at the council level for council to approve this or deny this. If you vote nay, then it reverts back to the language that's in the agenda to vote on sending it to staff or not.
And Mr. Mayor, that's what would have happened to begin with, right? Like if, it would have gone to city staff and it would have.
Correct. If you had approved it, it would have gone right to city staff and it would have been approved.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, any additional questions or confusion about what we're voting on here?
Just have one question. And this is for Kevin Rogers, if this amendment gets denied or fails, I should say, is there then any recourse in us voting on number 10 because it's not the same language as what we postponed? Is that a problem legally or no?
It's not. Council would be telling staff, we do not accept your wish to defer this matter to council. Council would be saying clearly now that it wishes for staff to make the decision.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded to amend the resolution to strike authorize city staff to, and then also, or deny so the new reading would be resolution approving the application of the Cedar Basin Music Festival. So all in favor of making this amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so that does pass, and that changes the language now so that the resolution is to approve the application of the Cedar Basin Music Festival as a public event permit for June 25th to 27th pursuant to the provisions, still pursuant to the provisions of the Code of Ordinances. So further discussion on that main item now.
I've just got a couple clarifications from staff. Council voted to change this procedure last year, correct? Or 2 years ago? Weren't these permits on the council agenda for the council to vote on prior to that?
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, what I mean by that is there was things like noise variances, street closures, but there wasn't necessarily on the council agenda for someone to have, you know, maybe they were going to have a 5K and they just needed to do insurance. So one of the things we came back a couple years ago was, let's streamline the process, because I think it was confusing for citizens too, like what has to go to council, what doesn't, or they were going to get held up because it had to go to council. So you're right, 2 years ago, we looked at that whole ordinance, made it clear, you know, that it's going to be a staff review, and, you know, that then the approval process would go at a staff level. And again, I think organizations have appreciated that in terms of being able to streamline that.
Yeah, and that would be my second point, is I can understand the back and forth conversation about whether to even bring this to the council, and I just wanted to say thanks for the sensitivity of this issue and what your intent was, so, in trying to avoid all this.
All right, so we do have the motion and the second on this item, and we haven't had public discussion or public comment on the main item. So does anyone from the public wish to speak? Yes, Councilor, Mr. Frine.
My only question would be if this sets a precedence for other people in the future to bypass the normal process we've been using forever. And then my other question would be, if I don't foresee that happening, but if it were to fail, what would the appeals process be if we've taken the appeals process away and decided it before council tonight? Because council was the appeals process before. If you guys decide firsthand, who do you appeal to if something were to fail? Thanks.
Thank you. For Mr. Gaines and staff?
Well, I believe the council would have to take that up again as the appeals process. So they would have to come up with some new or evidence that's compelling to make an argument before the council to approve or deny whichever the appeal is going for.
Okay, thank you. And anyone else from the public? Yes, Mr. Sharp.
Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street. So I just need a point of clarification. So you just approved to have council vote on this. If it fails, does it go back to staff, or does it fail, like Live to 9, they will not get to hold their event? That's all I want to make sure I understand what everybody's going to be voting on. Thank you.
Right, so since this is at the council level, a vote tonight would either approve or deny that permit. And is that we fall into the appeals process? If they want to appeal that denial, they would have to come back to council, correct?
That's correct. The way this is worded now, Mayor, I don't think at a staff level we could issue the permit. So, yeah, if it fails.
All right, so any other public comment? I see anything? Okay.
Yes, 0945.
All right, so 0945, the floor is yours. Name and address for the record, please.
Yep. Bob Seymour again, 2710 Country Meadow Lane. You know, we've been kicking this down the road here for about 2 months now, and it's getting very difficult from a timing standpoint here to organize. And, you know, we need to have a decision here on whether or not the city wants any of these events to move forward, or we're going to go round and round in circles, and before you know it, there won't be any bands, we won't be able to book what we need to book, and we're going to be done. So I would really encourage you to vote this and approve these permits so we can move forward with these festivals and try to get this done this year. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Seymour. And any other public comment?
I'm not seeing any more.
Okay, so with that, I see no others from the gallery, so any final discussion from council on this item? All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cruz, go ahead.
I'm assuming this is just item number 10, correct?
That's correct, because they're
Just
being
referring
considered
to the
separately.
Cedar Basin Music Festival permit.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So it's been motioned and seconded, resolution approving the application of Cedar Basin Music Festival for a public event permit for June 25th, 27th, pursuant to provisions of code of ordinances. And this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Harding,
Yes.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Dunn,
Aye.
all voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I'd like to take one liberty here with the next item, item 11. It says, just as before, resolution authorizing city staff to approve or deny the application of Live to 9 for event permit. From the previous discussion, it sounds like the view of council was that they wanted to have that amendment or the motion flipped so that it would also say resolution to approve the application of the Live to 9 event. So rather than a lengthy discussion about it, would any council member object to changing that language so it says resolution approving the application of Live to 9 tonight? I want to be clear about that. I'm seeing no objection to that. And Mr. Rogers, is that acceptable for us to do that with council consensus?
Right, yes.
Okay, and it avoids quite a bit of discussion potentially that might not be necessary. So that's how this will read then for tonight, is a resolution approving the application of the Live to 9 public event permit for June 25th to 26th, 2021, pursuant to the provisions of the Code of Ordinances. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and seconded. Open it up for council questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. In this particular case, there's a difference here. This is a new event, a new venue. It's a private venue, not under public ownership. The request is to block off public streets in a kind of a dead-end corner of the downtown area. There's a concern by people that if somebody has a heart attack, let's say by the Hertz Donuts, and having access to that person in a timely fashion. I know our emergency response people do a great job, but seconds count in that scenario. The capacity of this particular venue is not such that the application, I believe, said 3,500 people. And of course, that's over a couple days, but it's going beyond the capacity of the plaza. And it's displacing about 50 parking spots, actually I think a little bit more than that are direly needed by the public. And on top of that, Community Main Street has not endorsed this. They were asked to have a letter of endorsement and they did not. So I think the people that make the decision on something like this would be the merchants that have to continue to have their business right around the plaza. And I'm not going to vote against the downtown merchants' wishes not to have this or not to support it. So that's my main concern on not approving this one.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Cruz. Other council comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Sires.
I met with Mark Kittrell today. He's involved with this since it's his plaza. He was willing to respect the parade and the band and donate some to the parade. He made me comfortable with what he talked about. So I move that we approve.
Mr. Mayor, we lost.
Can you say that again?
Lost.
Okay, so apparently couldn't hear. If you could speak closer into your mic.
If whoever was speaking, if they could repeat after I finished.
After I finished speaking with Mark Kittrell today, I felt good about their willingness to respect the Marine Band, the parade. He was willing to donate to the parade, so it made me a little more comfortable with this. I think we should just move ahead with it and see how it plays out. We can always adjust next year if we just extend the contract. This doesn't have any, extend the contract that Sturgis Falls had for 1 year, and then we can look back on this and decide what we want to do from there. But I think we need to move ahead and let them have their event down there.
Okay, so other comments from council before I go to the public? Councilmember Dunn?
I just want to be clear, because I know that some folks take this as, not supporting a certain organization, and I feel like that is not true at all. The city has been, I feel like, nothing but supportive of, this is for Sturgis Falls, because Sturgis Falls has voiced opposition to this. The other thing is, I feel like we are in a time in our city, in our state, in our country where, I got to give props to the people that step up and look for compromise. And from what I've understood, there's been compromise extended from one entity and maybe not from the other. I have hopes that in the end we can all work together. But I've gone back to reflect on that original, I think it was a work session vote, and questioned if I made the right vote. And I come back to where I feel like I did. I don't feel like it's any one organization's right to dictate what we have on our public streets in our downtown area. And that is not, I appreciate all the volunteers who make all these things happen. So that being said, let's let them have it. I mean, we didn't have anything last year. This is going to be, hopefully, if we can do it all safely, a great year to come back together and support every single one of them. And so that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Dunn. Seeing nothing else from council, I'll open it up for public comment as
Mr.
well.
Mayor, one last comment quick, if I may.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz, go ahead.
I think there's a misunderstanding here that people feel that the Sturgis Falls organization isn't welcoming of different venues and different artists and that sort of thing. That's far from the case. They're very welcoming. It's a matter of the items to have fairness in the process, contribute to the variable expenses that would take place over time if the weather is phenomenal and there's thousands of people showing up. You got fixed costs to operate something like this, your staging, your various things you have to rent, and then the variable costs are very important to cover. The porta potty pumping,
I have a point of order.
Garbage.
Just a moment. Point of order.
With all due respect to Councilman Cruz, this is on Live to 9. This is not on Sturgis Falls. We can have that discussion when the contract for Sturgis Falls comes up.
But to that
Point taken. So you need to please keep your comments tailored to the Live to 9 event.
I am, Mr. Mayor. This is all part of the costs of running this event as it relates to that weekend, which is also the Sturgis Falls weekend. And previous speakers have alluded to the fact that Sturgis Falls wants to control the whole area. They just want fairness in the costs. And I reiterate again that Community Main Street does not support this. So I think that's a pretty significant element.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Cruz. Now I'll move over to public comment. Then I have Mr. Sharp. Name and address for the record, please, again, sir.
Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street, Cedar Falls. So in response to some of the comments by some council members, I read the email from the Live to 9 committee, and I was very disappointed in what they had to say, trying to work out with some compromises. They thought they came to some agreements. The other party backed out of those agreements. At the end of the email, Live to 9 looks like, and I'm no way a part of Live to 9. I'm just every citizen. I support both organizations. I like to attend a lot of functions there. But it looks like, from what I read, Live to 9 is willing to do a lot of stuff, sharing the cost of the permits, the whatever, music, copyright stuff, all that stuff. So it's like Live to 9 is trying to be a working partner with this stuff. And as for the comments about closing an intersection that could affect ambulances or fire response, then we need to apply that to every time we shut down Main Street for Holiday Hoopla, for Artapalooza, or whatever else, or the Sturgis Falls Parade, Sturgis Falls, Overman Park, because all those streets are also shut down, they can also affect emergency response. So let's not just highlight that one area, Live to 9, and say, look what could happen there, because it could happen every time we have something here. Point being, like I said before, you're not in the business, pick winners or losers. Live to 9 knows what they're doing. Any entity that wants to compete against Sturgis, if you want to call it competition, let them do it. Let the market forces show who's a winner or not. I think I see an agency that wants to work together. Just vote yes. Let this happen. Thank you.
And Mr. Frine?
Might have finally got this mass figured out. Again, I just want to ask about the appeals process again, because I have never seen where you appeal to the same people who denied you before. I mean, I don't think you can expect to overturn an appeal unless, you're bringing the same evidence forward you had before, because if you had more evidence to begin with, you would have presented it and probably swayed the council to change their opinions then. So again, I just wonder how do you appeal to the same people who denied you before?
Volume is gone again.
I don't know what to do about that.
Just continue.
So that's just a concern of mine, not saying that this is going to get denied, but here we are talking about, I don't know if it's going to be just the Sturgis Falls weekend we're going to bring these before council or what we're doing. Or, if somebody plans a 4th of July event, are we going to bring it before council and just bypass everything and go straight to the appeals process, really, is what we're doing. And that's kind of a scary thought to think if somebody doesn't like an event or whatnot and the appeal gets denied before essentially before the actual permit even gets denied. That's a concern of mine. Again, let the event happen. But my concern would be, what's preventing me then from organizing watching the grass grow in the park event or something similar and saying, I just want it to go before council for a vote. Silly as it may seem, and I don't have any such event planned, but it would be silly to think that now I'm just going to jump ship because everybody else is doing it and go straight to council. So that's a concern. And I've heard a couple of council members say, the process is the process, but here we are circumventing that same process. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Frine. I'll just note in this case, that was an option before council to have this considered by staff. Council elected or voted to consider it on their own, these two items. So this would be a special case. We wouldn't normally do this, but since the council's desire is to consider this here tonight, that's the only reason we're doing that. But your point is well taken about the need for a solid appeals process that's separate from the original approving or denying body. So thank you for that comment. Any other public comment?
Yes. Bob Seymour?
Yes, Mr. Seymour. Name and address for the record, then I'll get you next, sir.
I think we
Lost volume again.
Thank you. Hey, are you there? Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, Mr. Seymour.
All right. Bob Seymour, 2710 Country Meadow Lane in Cedar Falls. A couple things here. We are completely, Live to 9, Cedar Basin Music Festival, are completely independent of Sturgis Falls. We have our own budget. We have our own board. We have the same expenses that Sturgis does. We're self-sufficient and have never asked for a penny from any other entity, government, bank, what have you. So to lump us together, we're completely separate entities, and we have hundreds of volunteers that donate their time and talent for this community, just like Sturgis Falls and just like any other event. So with Main Street, they didn't write a letter of support, nor did they object because they're trying to stay neutral here and let the permit run through the process that it has for the last 20 years, and that's the reason why. So Live to 9 would be more than happy to coordinate on the marine ban. We've already told folks that we will shut down and not interrupt it. That's a given. Any event's going to do that. And also, same thing with the streets. We'll close down the streets. We'll open the streets. We've offered to work with them. And those are simple items. And, of course, we're going to agree to those. And, this is another option during Sturgis Falls weekend and beyond that we're trying to bring to this community. And I would urge you to approve this permit tonight. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Seymour. Any other public comment? Oh, yes, sir, please, go forward. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Kyle Henderson, 1008 Eric in Cedar Falls. I am a member of the Live Denying Committee, and I just want to address some of the concerns you had, and then if you had any more questions, please feel free to ask. But we have compensated for the lost parking spaces. We have found private parking spots that would have been allowed to be used for this.
Yeah, come closer to the mic.
That better?
Yeah.
Thank you. The plaza capacity, when I filled out the permit, is considered for the whole 2 days. The 3,500 wasn't anticipated at one time, nor do we think it will ever get to that capacity. We will honor the capacities that are allowed. The Marine Corps Band, as Bob said, we have agreed as a committee, and we will not have live music during that, just out of respect for the event and for the Marine Corps themselves. Also, I do want to state that the city staff was extremely supportive in helping us through this and helping the negotiations, and we do really appreciate it. And I think the process works well, and in the future, I think following the process would be great. And if you have any more questions on that or the permit itself, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any other public comment?
We have one more from Zoom. Kim Bear.
Okay, Kim Bear, good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Kim Bear, Community Main Street Executive Director, 3815 Union Road in Cedar Falls. I just wanted to speak on behalf of Community Main Street. I agree with Bob Seymour's sentiments that we are trying to remain neutral. However, when Live Tonight asked to do, when they submitted their permit last year, pre-COVID, Community Main Street was in complete support of the event, with the exception of asking them to replace the parking spots, which Kyle Henderson obviously just pointed out as well. So we are not opposed to this. We were not asked to write a letter in support of it. So I just wanted to clarify that we are in support of good things happening in downtown district. And obviously this is a permit that is approved by the city, and we are not a city entity. So I just wanted to speak on behalf of our organization. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bear. Other public comment?
I don't see any more.
Okay, so anyone else from the gallery? Then back to council for any final words before a vote. Councilmember Harding?
Mr.
Mayor? Yeah, Councilmember Harding first, and then Councilmember Dara.
So just for point of clarity, we are where we are. For the future, I would just request that we follow the process, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Dara.
I would echo that. I haven't been in the middle of it. I've heard a lot about it. It's regrettable that it's come to be this complicated, when in fact Sturgis is one of the best things that happens in Cedar Falls. There's plenty of room for everybody. I hope we can all play by the rules in the future, support one another. And because I really think it's my understanding that city staff made a good faith effort to get the three organizations to work together, which my understanding they had gotten to that point, and somehow things kind of changed. And that's not Cedar Falls. We're in it together. I hope we don't have to go through this again in the future. And thanks to all three groups for making Cedar Falls such a great place.
Thank you, Councilmember Dara. Any final words from council? Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded, and this is the resolution approving the application for Live to 9 for an event permit for June 25th, 26th, 2021. And this requires a roll call vote.
Miller.
Aye.
Cruz.
Aye.
Harding.
Yes.
Dara.
Aye.
Sires.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us over into our new business, which is a consent calendar where the following items will be acted upon by a voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does any council member wish to pull an item from 12 to 18? You seeing none? Does anyone from the public wish to pull an item 12 through 18? Again, seeing none. So I'll read those items. Item 12 is receiving and filing the mayor's monthly report for February 2021. 13 is receiving and filing communication from the mayor establishing the Cedar Falls Racial Equity Task Force. 14 is receiving and filing resignations of members from boards and commissions. 15 is receiving and filing work session minutes for February 15th, 2021, with those changes that the city clerk had mentioned earlier. Item 16 is receiving and filing committee of the whole minutes relative to extension of paid parking in municipal lots. 17 is receiving and filing the departmental monthly reports of January. And then finally, 18 is approving applications for beer permits and liquor licenses. Is there a motion to approve these items?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that passes and brings us over to the resolution calendar. These items will be acted upon by a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does any council member wish to pull an item 19 through 36?
27 and 28.
27, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, 27 and 28. And others from council? Okay, seeing none, then from the public, does anyone from the public wish to pull an item 19 through 36? Okay, seeing none. So we'll pull item 27 and 28. I'll read the remainder. I'll try to be brief. 19 is resolution levying final assessment for costs for Tomoa property at 234 Clark Drive. 20 is levying a final assessment of costs on property mowed at 821 Madison. 21 is resolution with final assessment for costs for property at 2303 Washington. 22 is a resolution extending the suspension of paid parking in municipal lots in the city of Cedar Falls. 23 is a resolution approving an amendment to the deed of dedication for the McMahill First Edition and ratifying approval of the final plat of that edition. 24 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement with Emergent Architecture for design services for the City Hall remodel project. 25 is a resolution approving and authorizing a community housing development organization agreement with the City of Waterloo and Iowa Habitat for Humanity. 26 is a resolution approving a CBD overlay zoning district site plan for construction of a restaurant and outdoor patio at 108 East 4th Street. 29 is a resolution approving an S1 shopping center district site plan for a build-out and facade improvements at 6607 University. 30 is a resolution approving and receiving and filing bids and accepting the low bid for a sanitary sewer rehabilitation project. 31 is a resolution approving and filing bids and accepting the low bid of K. Cunningham Construction for the downtown streetscape and reconstruction project. 32 is a resolution approving certificate of completion and accepting the work of Feldman for the 2020 sidewalk assessment project. 33 is a resolution approving final statement of expenditures for the 2020 sidewalk assessment project, Zone 3. 34 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a supplemental agreement to Terracon Consultants for work and site plan monitoring for the First Street reconstruction project. 35 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a utilities relocation and easement with Quest Corporation relative to the Cedar Heights reconstruction project. And finally, 36 is a resolution receiving and filing and setting March 15, 2021 as the date of a public hearing for proposed plans, specifications, form of contract for the 2021 street reconstruction project. Is there a motion to approve these items minus 27 and 28?
So moved.
It's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Aye. Yes.
Sarah, Sires,
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Going back to item 27, this is a resolution approving a College Hill neighborhood overlay zoning district site plan for a remodel to double the number of bedrooms at 704, 706 West 28th Street, where P&Z recommended denial. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
motion and seconded. Open it for council discussion. Councilmember Harding, if you'd like to go first.
I guess some further clarification from staff on, I understand the recommendation for denial, but I'm still trying to grasp the full understanding. Is it within his right to do this? What exactly is the exact reason for the recommendation for denial, I guess? Or can anyone shed some more light on that, please?
Karen Howard is here
Good
to
evening.
speak on that.
This is
Yes, Ms. Howard, go
I
ahead.
can help answer that question. Yes, this is a property that's in the College Hill Overlay District. And as you may recall, that this overlay district was established basically to provide some extra scrutiny for these types of cases, these types of requests, to help, the purpose of the overlay is to help stabilize and preserve the character of these neighborhoods. So any request for either a duplex or a multifamily building to add bedrooms requires Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council review.
Okay, so does that answer your question, Councilmember Harding?
It does. I guess I'm on the fence because I've read it a couple times and I don't quite understand how it's changing the character of the neighborhood because there are other houses around that are 8 occupants and some that are 7, and I'm just trying to find that line where it really does change the character of the neighborhood. So could you maybe share some more on how staff really feels like this is definitely going to change the character of the neighborhood?
So some of the factors that we looked at are how the building was originally constructed, how it has been used over the years, and this has been a 2-bedroom per side duplex for many years. And there's a number of properties in this neighborhood that are similar to that. The request here is to add bedrooms and double the number of bedrooms for each of these units so there's 8 bedrooms then instead of 4 for this duplex. So we look at the factors because increasing the density and intensity of the use of these properties will change the character potentially of these properties and the intensity of the use of the properties. Some of those factors that can detract from the neighborhood then are the additional cars, the additional parking that comes with having 8 adults live on the property instead of 4, and increasing the activity level and basically the wear and tear on properties that were originally built to house with just 2 bedrooms per unit. So those are some of the factors that staff looked at and also looked at the intent of the overlay district. I know there was quite a bit of discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and there's several owner-occupied properties across the street in kitty corner from this property. Both of those property owners did attend the second Planning and Zoning Commission and expressed some concerns about increasing the density of these properties. They felt like these duplexes had provided good housing for a number of people over the many years and didn't see the need to increase the intensity of the use of these properties. And they're concerned about a tipping factor in a neighborhood that still has some owner occupants in the neighborhood.
Is this house currently approved for 8 occupants or is it less?
The duplex is currently has allowed 2 adults per side in this duplex. So that means that you can have kids as well, but it's 2 adults per side. There's 2 bedrooms in each one of those units.
So go ahead.
So Council Member Cruz, was that you?
Yes, thank you.
Question? Okay.
Some key components here we need to look at. Ms. Howard mentioned the tipping point of the neighborhood. This neighborhood, from this home to the campus, which is only a few hundred feet away, is virtually 100% rentals at this point. The tipping already took place many, many years ago. we're in this, actually, this 4-block area, there's like 5 or 6 non-rentals. The rest are probably at the point of 95% rentals. We're in the shadow of the campus, and I know that College Hill visioning people have encouraged and talked about having the density next to campus to be higher. The neighborhood is a college rental neighborhood. It's not a single-family neighborhood any longer. And to the point of the comments in some of the letters, they talked about the street parking being filled with students. Those cars that are on that 28th Street are commuters, because all the renters have to, or the landlords have to have off-street parking, 1 per bedroom. So the street parking is congested by commuters, not additional tenants. The property owner has built a parking lot that was approved by the building department. I know we're going to discuss it in item 28, but literally this street would be full of cars if there was no houses whatsoever on this street, because we're 1 block from campus. It totally fits the neighborhood and the higher density request that's been discussed by visiting people. And the other element here to be aware of is if you don't allow students to live next to campus, I mean, they're in town to study, they're in town to attend the university, they should be allowed to live within a block of campus. You go to the north of this, you got University Avenue, and right across University Avenue, you have 100% rentals, large apartment complexes, and so on. So I think this is a perfect situation here to allow a property that was built with a full basement. They're not adding to the basement. The basement is basically empty. There's lots of room for the bedrooms. They're not tiny bedrooms. The minimum size in the code says 70 square feet. These are much larger than that. This would be a very good fit for the student neighborhood in the shadow of the campus. So I encourage people to support it. I can't find any detriment to this at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cruz. Any other from Councilmember Miller? Go ahead.
A couple things, Mr. Harding. These are hard because there is no line.
I know.
They're all gray, and we get to decide that. For staff, excuse me, has there been any guidance from the Imagine College Hill work that's taken place? I don't believe they've come out with their results yet, but is there any guidance on this neighborhood as far as what they see the future holding?
Yes, so the draft is out, and they have looked at the different, similar to downtown, different character areas of this, the College Hill area. And this particular neighborhood is considered part of the Searly Park neighborhood that they've defined as low scale, continuing to stabilize those neighborhoods. I think there was a number of people that participated in the charrette process from this particular neighborhood, expressing some concerns about that they like the students to be there, but they felt like it needed to keep a balance and keep the low scale nature of this particular area. So this particular area is actually listed in the vision plan in the draft right now as part of that area that needs to be stabilized and preserved and enhanced for the area around. It's not considered part of the core of College Hill, which is intended then for higher density close to the campus.
And a second question, I'm looking at the map and the staff report, and it looks to me like there's close to 10 owner-occupied residents within a couple blocks of this property. Is that accurate? As far, I think it was mentioned that the tipping point has already happened, and I'm seeing 10 properties that are still owner-occupied. Correct?
Yeah, I have that map up on my screen if anybody's interested in looking at it, but that is correct. There are we did look at, because the commission asked that question, so at the second meeting, we brought back this map that showed the owner-occupied properties and also the number of approved occupants in each one of the properties surrounding this.
Okay, other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Cyrus?
Just one question. Doesn't this meet all the current requirements right now? Doesn't this meet all the requirements right now?
The requirement is to get Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council approval for any increase in the number of bedrooms for the unit. So it's really up to the council to decide that.
And just to clarify, P&Z denied it, right?
That's correct.
Or recommended denial, correct? Like they
Yes.
don't have final say.
So,
Right.
last question, sorry. So there's no actual hard set of rules that he could meet that would say, well, there's no reason to deny him because he met these rules. The only rule, quote unquote, is to, since it's in an overlay, to get P&Z review and council approval. Is that correct process?
That's correct. The idea here is to give the discretion for a more careful review of these cases where there's an increase in occupancy or density.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, I'll open it up for public comment as well. So does anyone from the gallery wish to speak on this item? Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Wes Geisler, 5373 South Hudson Road, Cedar Falls. I'm applicant of this increase in occupancy. The duplex there right now was built in 1952, and its original intent was obviously 2 bedrooms each, but with the finishing of the basement that I proposed, it'll bring the total square footage to 1,540 square feet, which is quite large for 2 4-bedroom units. Also, the parking that some neighbors were worried about, there were 4 parking spaces for 4 tenants as it is now, and there will be 8 for the proposed 8 tenants in the future. In the staff report at the P&Z meeting, city staff wrote, additional density may be appropriate, even desirable in other areas of College Hill closer to campus. This is within 1 block of campus, and as some of the council members were stating earlier, it's so close that many students come to that street just to park as commuters to the university. A couple other things that were noted in the staff report as far as the surrounding buildings, was stated that around it is low to moderate density, which it said right adjacent to it, which the 2 adjacent to it are a house that is approved for 4 and 1 for 3. And actually, according to the current rules, the one approved for 4 is actually over occupied, and the 1 for 3 is the maximum occupancy for that lot. So some of the surrounding places are highly densely populated for the lot that they are on. And Councilman Harding had a question about, are there any set in stone rules that could help deny or approve this? There are, obviously in the code, there's so this is R2, there's rear yard, front yard square footage requirements for an R2 district, which for a 2-unit is 8,000 square feet of lot area and 70 square feet lot width. And this lot does meet all those requirements. It's actually over square footage, just 10,000 square feet, and it's 70 square feet wide, or 70 feet wide. I mean, it meets every technical requirement that is in the code. The only problem that city staff had with it was the density and related to the surrounding area, which, as I stated, the adjacent ones that they pointed out as low to moderate are both fully occupied for their lot sizes. The only reason those are 3 and 4 and this one can be 8 is because of the lot sizes. Those are 63 and 66 feet wide. And this one's 70 feet wide, which qualifies it for 2 units as is on it. Also, the density problem, there are, as it was stated earlier, quite a few duplexes, just a few houses down towards the campus that are all filled with 8, and the city pointed out that they had significantly larger lots than this one. But I actually looked it up, and the lot that this one's placed on is 10,430 square feet. The 2 that are listed on that map that the city staff wrote up are 10,900 and 13,300. So just a small bit larger. And then there's another duplex right off the map, one closer to the campus that's 7,500 square feet only and houses 8 tenants. So this lot is in line with all the surrounding parcels, and there's no technicalities that would deny this proposal. It's just the density, which I've addressed, is relative to the ones all around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Geiser. Any staff comment to that we'd want to add in? Okay.
No, I think Mr. Geisler is correct. It meets the zoning requirements with regard to for a duplex. But the question this evening is really about adding bedrooms to that duplex.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment tonight?
Seeing none in Zoom.
Okay, and none in the gallery. So bring it back to council for final discussion prior to the vote.
Do we know this? Could someone tell me the square footage of the other 8 occupant duplexes down the road that I see? Are the square footages of those available?
The square footage is of the buildings or the?
Of the other duplexes that are, or buildings that are 8 occupants. To the left on the map, there's a grouping of 3 red that have 8 occupants. What is the square footage of those? Do we have that available?
I don't have the square footage of those particular buildings, and I'm not sure when those were originally approved. So,
are those duplexes as well, or are they more than duplexes?
I'm sorry.
Are those are those duplexes as well, the red ones, or are they more quadplexes?
Yes, they are duplexes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cyrus.
I think it's a good spot to add on a few extra bedrooms and have the students be nice and close to the college where they have the walkability. They can walk to school, they can leave their car parked. I think it's a perfect situation.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Dunn.
For me, what makes me hesitate on approving this is the fact that we do have a College Hill neighborhood overlay district and what that asks council to do, which is recognize that, step back a second. I mean, I get like it meets the requirements, but the purpose of the overlay, I think, is to recognize that neighborhood maybe wanted to try to preserve what, that everything isn't packed rentals. And as a person who lived on College Hill for, 7, 8 years, I can respect that. And that's what makes me hesitate to approve anything, because I can understand why that's in place or why we think about that.
Thank you, Councilmember Dunn. Final thoughts, final comments.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
I can answer Mr. Harding's question there. The duplexes down the street have approximately 1,500 square feet. They're almost identical to this subject property here. And to some other comments here that this is like the Steerley Park neighborhood, I would dispute that, because this is on this particular block, there's only one owner-occupied property left. It's all rentals. And the one to the north of that, between University and 28th Street, it's all but two properties are rentals, college student rentals. And to Mr. Cedars' comment, what better place to have the students than live within a block of campus? There's evolutions in neighborhoods, and there's nothing set in stone that the college envisioning would, with a better understanding of what's in this neighborhood, agree that this should be all college students. And it is college students. It's not going to change. Some of these other owner-occupied properties, as time goes on and they eventually come up for sale, they can easily convert to rentals, and this entire area could become a rental. And again, as Councilman Cedar said, it's in the shadow of the campus. Street parking is always going to be full of commuters, and this is an ideal scenario for resident-only parking, and that would solve the problem of parking on the street. So I'd be strongly in favor of this. It just makes sense and keeps the students close to campus instead of spreading them out into the community. Thank you.
I think Councilmember Cruz. Any final else from anyone else on council? Okay, so seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded to approve College Hill Zoning Overlay District Site Plan to remodel double the number of bedrooms at 704, 706 West 28th Street. And this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Nay.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Yes.
Dara,
Nay.
Cedars,
Aye.
Dunn,
Nay.
3 voting aye and 3 voting nay. Motion fails.
So my understanding is that because it was an approval with the motion failing, that means that this item is not approved, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So with that, yes, Councilmember Cruz?
I believe there's provisions in our rules that when there's an absent council member, we can postpone this till they're all present.
I don't believe that's the case. I believe that a council member can request to have it brought back up, but it's not an automatic. So that can be discussed at the next meeting.
The absent council member could?
Yes.
Correct.
In admin policy 7.
Or somebody on the prevailing side. What's the prevailing side on this?
It's either the prevailing side or an absent council member. So it could technically be brought back.
So it could be brought back by Councilmember DeBur.
It says, move to reconsider must be made and seconded by members who voted on the prevailing side or by those who were absent and did not vote upon the motion to be reconsidered. So yes, that would be Councilmember DeBura has that right to bring it back up.
Okay, thank you.
With that, that takes us to item 28, which is a resolution approving a College Hill Neighborhood Overlay Zoning District Site Plan for construction of a driveway with landscape improvements at 704 to 706 West 28th Street as recommended by city staff. And this is the same property. So is there a motion to approve the item?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. And open it up for council discussion and questions.
I got my answer earlier. I just felt that it was pertinent to pull it since I wanted to talk heavily about 27. But this was basically approved because originally it wasn't realized it was in the overlay zone. Was that correct? And then when 27 was brought up, they found out it was in the overlay, and so then so we're retroactively approving this with the recommendation to replace the landscaping, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments from council? And from the public? Okay, anything from Zoom?
Nothing in
All right,
Zoom.
so seeing none from Zoom, then that brings us back for a resolution approving the site plan for construction of a driveway with landscaping improvements. And this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Yes.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us out of the resolution calendar and into bills and claims. Is there a motion to approve bills and claims for March 21st?
So moved.
Excuse me, March 1st.
Second.
So motion and seconded. Any council discussion? From the public? Okay, so this requires a roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Cruz,
Aye.
Harding,
Yes.
Dara,
Aye.
Sires,
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have any city council referrals tonight? Seeing none, then any council updates? And again, seeing none. So any staff updates?
No staff updates, Mayor.
Seeing none. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
The motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great discussion tonight.